Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. We're very, very glad you're with us. This is our special guest interview speaker series. And today is the fourth lesson, Secrets for an Effective Interview. It's April 28th, 2021. For those people on Zoom, we ask if you have any questions, as soon as you think about them, just put them right in the chat box. It makes it easy. That way you don't have to think about it and remember it later. And our presenter will be looking. She does keep the chat box up, so she'll see them as they pop up. And for those people watching on Facebook, please feel free to enter your questions in the comment field. I am monitoring that feed, and I'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Please note, this event is, whoops, well, here we go. I guess we're not advancing slides. Here we go. Please note, this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your name, comments, and picture to appear. Man, you think after 257 times saying that I have that down pat. Oh, well. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area by putting everything they need to know in their job search in one place. In 2012, I started careerusa.org to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search that you may not know. It's available on Amazon. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. And at the end of this presentation, I will tell you about our upcoming programming this Friday. And since 2017, I've been part of the practice interview team, the PIT crew, which you'll hear more about in just a second. So, well, let's hear about the PIT crew now. Good afternoon,
Here we
Mark.
go. 1 second later, here I am. Thanks, Jeff. I'm Mark McDonald. I am the leader of the PIT crew. I've been doing that since 2014. And my qualifications for leading the PIT crew, as I was laid off myself 3 times between 2002 and 2012. I worked in the telecommunications industry. It was a great career, but it started to shrink after that recession in the early 2000s. And three times. The first 2 times I landed pretty quickly, not real long job searches, but the third time I never really did. And so I took a bridge job, and then I retired in May of 2018. So I've had a lot of experiences like you guys are going through, and I bring that to the PIT crew. We provide practice interviews based on a job description that you provide. So you send in your job description and your resume. I have a group of volunteers who have also all been hiring managers, and all of them have experience with job transition. Some of them are retired, but some of them are right now in job transition, seeking new employment, and they volunteer their time to give you a very personalized and customized interview experience. It's also, a safe and supportive environment where you can make mistakes. As a matter of fact, we want you to make mistakes so you don't make those in your real interviews. You want, discover where your, your approach is not as effective as it could be. And so once the interview is over, there'll be feedback and there'll be a discussion about interviewing, and you can ask questions. You get a recording, and you get all of that for free. So there's no charge at all. And if you want to practice, or when you're ready to practice, just send that information to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. It's right at the bottom of that card. And when we get back to meeting face to face, you can come to the PIT crew and get a card and participate in the discussion after the interviews are over. And so that brings us to this webinar. As Walt and I, when we became virtual, put together a 13 series webinar on interviewing, and Carol's our guest speaker today, so that's very exciting. We start the 13 sessions over next week. So next Wednesday, we'll start with session number 1 of the 13, which is preparing to interview, and how to, and some background information on recruiting, on recruiters, and how to work with recruiters. That's what I'm searching for, how to work with recruiters. So that's the first session of the 13-part series. There's my LinkedIn profile. I encourage you to link in with me. Just send an email or a message that says we met on Interview Wednesday, and I'll add you to my network. That's very important for finding connections in your target companies. And so that's all it requires, a short message from you in LinkedIn. And then I want to mention that I do one other thing besides lead the pit crew. I coach, and I coach just on one topic, and that is, why did you leave your last position? And it may not be your last position, it may be a position 2 or 3 back, but if there's anything in your background that causes you anxiety that you're going to have to answer that question, let's have a discussion about it, and we'll storyboard how to tell it based on your situation. And then not just the initial question, why did you leave your last job? Or tell me about why you left XYZ company, but any follow-up questions that your situation may generate. So you'll be well prepared for that question. And when you're well prepared and confident, there's about a 99% chance you won't get asked that question. So there you go. That's how it works. Reach out to me same way via email if you'd like to have one of those coaching sessions. Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome. 2 good questions have popped up. Deanna says, how does one register for the 13-part series? Just show up here next week at 1 o'clock, same login, same, it'll be the same Zoom link, the same Facebook link. But I'll put that information out. If you're getting emails, you'll get it in an email coming out next week. Barbara said, are you limited to 1 session, 1 interview session? No, you can practice. Well, I assume you're talking about practicing interviewing. And if you're for practicing at the pit crew, you can do that as many times as you want. We've had candidates do it 4, 5, 6 times, because every time you do it, you're going to get a little bit better and a little bit better. And 9
times is the record, but you don't have to go that far before you land.
So, you're welcome to, reach out to Mark. Mark will put his contact information here in the chat box in just a second. But, you're welcome to reach out to him to be able to do it. And you can do it as often as you want. And if you're talking about the interview session as far as our series, you're welcome to join us every week. Like I said, there is no registration for that. All right, let's hear from Walt Glass, the Interview Success Workshop. Good afternoon, Walt.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a free workshop, but I've decided to start taking donations. Minimum amount is $10,000. If you can't afford that, then get 1,000 of you together for $10 and send that in to me. So it'd be welcome. But if you don't have the 10,000, the workshop, you'll just have to owe me for the rest of your life. So what do? Well, I like to help people gain their skills and confidence for those successful job interviews as well. I do it in a different way. I do it online. I do it with very informal. It's a learning session. It's going to practice. You're going to get interviewed. We'll cover the basics of the 11 categories of questions, so that you can understand options, strategies, structures, ways that we can answer a question depending on who's asking, what the question is, and where you are in the process. Those are the 3 elements for figuring out how you might respond. And how we get into a conversation, how can we do openings, closing, paying attention to salary, overqualified, negative questions, what's your greatest failure, all those kinds of things we talk about to get the basics for the interview. And I also stress differentiation. How do we differentiate ourselves from other candidates? And how do we sell ourselves, made up of who we are, what we do, and how we help? I've done a lot of interviews, and I very seldom see how we help, which is the main reason people are buying us. It's that what we do is important, who we are and our soft skills and characteristics are important, very important. But if we can't help them achieve what they're trying to do, and we're looking at our job and say, what kind of results do we provide? That's going to be the differentiator. What do you like most about your job? Well, I like teamwork. I like collaboration. I like this. What if you change that to, I like turning customers around. I like increasing revenue. I like putting things in the achievement section. So what drives me are the results. Well, I enjoy what I do. So we talk about those kind of things. So you have to be registered to attend. Look me up on LinkedIn. Tells you all about the workshop. My email address, walt_glass@yahoo.com, is reserved for the workshop. Send me an email, said I'd like to register, and I'll send you some availability dates so that you can come on down. So it's fun, it's informal, no squirming allowed. So we call it learning without squirming.
Walt, thank you very, very much. All right, well, while we were giving Walt and Mark the month of April off, we went out and we found 4 guest speakers to talk from their point of view about interviewing and for their perspectives. So today, Carol Brickell is with us. Many of you know Carol. She is our instructor for a lot of the resume classes we do on Thursdays, but she's going to talk the secrets for an effective resume. So Carol, thank you for being with us, and it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks for the introduction, and I'll share my screen. And welcome to everyone. Glad to see we've got quite a group out there. I'm going to open up my participant box, and when you see me looking over here, I'm just looking at my second monitor. I'm going to open up my chat box as well. And I'm interested, we've got quite a group out there. If you're from outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area, type in where you're from. It'd be kind of fun to see where everybody's from. And welcome to this presentation, Secrets for an Effective Interview. When people ask me how long it took me to create this presentation, it took me 40 years to create this. Actually, this has 40 years of experience in 1 hour. It's all my favorite tips about interviewing. And I'll explain a little bit about my background and where that all came from. So yeah, we've got people from Atlanta, New Jersey, New York City. That's great. Tyler, Houston, Ohio, Atlanta. Excellent. So welcome. So it's nice that we've expanded beyond the DFW area. Welcome to everyone. And I have designed this to be fun and interactive, and we will use the interactive features of Zoom. So you're welcome to open up the participant box and especially open up the chat box. And to get everyone warmed up in Zoom and the chat or comments on Facebook Live, go ahead and type in something if you have any interviews planned in the near future. Either no, or I hope so, or yes, or let us know. Do you have any interviews planned in the near future? When I look over here, I'm looking at my second monitor. Ooh, someone has one tomorrow. Good, this is good timing. Oh, another one tomorrow. Somebody says, I wish. Okay, well, if you've applied online, your chance of getting called for an interview is very, very low, almost zero, unless you reach out to a person at that company. Either somebody you know, the recruiter who posted the job, or a recruiting leader, and let them know you meet the requirements, and that'll increase your chances. Okay, that's a free little career coaching tip I learned after being a recruiter. Good, so some people are getting ready for some interviews. And what I'll be doing is sharing literally 40 years of experience from the various experiences I've had. And your job is just to kind of sit back and interact and enjoy the presentation and apply what works well for you. I'll give lots of different ideas, and we have Mark and Walt and several other experts out in the audience today. As you all have comments, anybody has comments or insights, feel free to type those in chat or go off mute if you want to make a real quick comment as well. That's fine as well. So I'll be sharing things from my perspective. I'd worked for over 30 years at an IT firm in a variety of roles: system engineering, sales, marketing, project management, HR, leadership development, a variety of different roles at EDS that was acquired by HP. And then I took early retirement in 2012 because I wanted to get a job as a recruiter so I could really learn how the industry works so that I could gain more skills and knowledge to be a better career coach. I had this dream of becoming a career coach, and it worked out to be a great experience. So I gained experience both as an agency recruiter and a corporate recruiter. And I've placed people in a variety of different roles. And then also where I've learned the most about interviewing is by serving every week with the pit crew, with Mark and Walt and Jeff, and being on a panel interview team, every week, week after week for the last couple of years. And I see even very, very experienced people still fall into the same potholes, regarding interviewing tricks. And so there are several things that strategies that everybody really needs to learn to master effective interviewing. And then also I'm certified by the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches, and I went to their conference last week, which is good. Okay. Good. And so here's our agenda for today. I'll start off by talking a little bit about video interviews, because most interviews are being conducted over video right now. And we'll talk about what you need to do to prepare for an interview, whether it's video or on site. And then I'll walk through several key how-tos, how to have a good start. And by having a good start, then you can have a good close. So I'll cover that right after that. So how to have a good start, how to have a good close to your resume. And then we'll talk through a couple of the challenging things like, why did you leave your last job? And of course, if you want additional coaching, Mark McDonald's great at coaching on that question. And then how to answer a question about something you don't know anything about. We'll talk about that from a couple different perspectives. And then we'll talk about behavioral interviewing questions. I'll explain what those are, and we'll talk about what a STAR story is. Okay, so just to get us all warmed up, I'm interested in hearing from the audience. I like to hear what's on your mind. What's the toughest question you have about interviews? What are you hoping we cover today? Go ahead and type a few keywords into chat, and I'll let you know if we're going to cover them in the session today, or I may take a quick moment and address your questions now. So what's the toughest question you have about interviews? Tell me about yourself. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a good opening. And why do you want this job? Okay, good. I don't talk a lot about that, a little bit, but be prepared for that. Be prepared to open with that. I'm really glad to be here to talk to you. Like when I retired from EDSHP and I was interviewing at Robert Half for a recruiter job, I had to convince them why I wanted that job. I said, I am so glad to be here at Robert Half because you helped me find my daughter a job. That meant a lot to me. And I want to help people find jobs. And I'm good at getting on the phone and telling people about candidates. So I love to get on the phones and I could do a great job for you. That was my opening. Okay, let's see. I got the job, by the way, and learned from wonderful people. Why do you want this job? Long career gaps of over 5 years. That might require a conversation with a career coach. If you did any continuing education or community leadership during that time, if you did it extensively, you could add that as something in there. Or if you were a caregiver for the family, you may just honestly took time for family leave. And more and more people are doing that. And if anybody has any suggestions about that, feel free to type those into chat. And that's from a resume perspective. And if they ask you, say honestly, you know, if you took time to be a caregiver for a family, say I had to serve as a caregiver and I honed these skills. Sometimes you hone some management skills. And then also if you did some education during that time, gained certifications, mention those. Returning to work, okay. Oh, what do you want to be in 5 years? Where will you be? Yeah. One, I'll go ahead and address that quickly. If somebody says, where do you want to be in 5 years? I like to reiterate, I want to do the best possible job in the job that I'm in. And as opportunities present themselves down the road, I will certainly be open to those opportunities. You don't want to paint yourself in the box because it's hard to predict what will happen in 5 years, but really emphasize that you want to do the best possible job that you will be doing in your current job. And then as opportunities open up, definitely be open to those. How do you answer those? You should not be asking that question. Yeah, like for example, I was asked this once when I was interviewing right out of college. Somebody asked me, do you envision yourself working very long or do you think you'll get married? And I answered, I said, would you ask that question of a man at the time? Because I didn't like being asked that. I wouldn't recommend that. What I would recommend, and that was when I was right out of college and I didn't know what to say. If somebody were to ask me something like that now, do you have children or grandchildren that's going to take time away from the job? I would just answer in terms of the job and say there's nothing that will impact my ability or availability to give my full attention to this particular job and to travel or do whatever is needed. So bring it back to the job requirements. Okay. Give me an overview about your history. Yes, we'll talk about that, about the tell me about yourself. Okay. Performance reviews. Wow, that's kind of weird. To provide performance reviews. Wow. Okay. maybe send them a summary memo of, in recent performance reviews, here's what your boss has said were your strengths and areas for development, maybe. Okay. Yeah, because not many people keep copies of their performance reviews. Why do you want this company? Yeah, research the company and be able to speak from the heart regarding why you want to work there, why you admire the things they've done, maybe the services they offer, the awards they've received, the work they do in the community. Why do you want to work there? Why should we hire you over someone else? Yes. So what you want to do is find out from the interviewer what they need and demonstrate to them that you have the skills to do what they need. You are the person to do that, to do what they need. Oh, if you were a tree, what kind of tree are you and why? If anybody has a good suggestion for how to answer the question about what kind of tree, type it into chat. I don't know if there's a right or wrong. I guess think of something evergreen, because I'm always positive. I'm evergreen. I don't know.
Carol, I can tell you that I'm a hibiscus tree, because in the summertime, you put it outside and it blossoms year round. And in the wintertime, you bring it inside and sit next to a window and it blossoms all year round. And that's me. I'm productive full time.
There's good. That's a great one. Good. Okay, HR will give me the range. What can I say if they ask me from the manager? Can I say a high number in the range? Yeah, I would. If they've already given you the salary range and they're asking you what salary you want, and if you're targeting kind of within the highish part of the range, don't box yourself in too much, but give them a range towards the top. I think that's fine. Or say, based on research I've done for those kind of jobs in the DFW area, I see the range is typically, go with the higher end. Are you willing to take a salary drop since you haven't worked in a few years? Wow, I would say I would keep it to the job and the skills and not knock myself. Like, you know, I haven't worked as a recruiter in 2 years, but I wouldn't take a salary cut because I haven't worked as a recruiter in 2 years. I'm still networking. I'm still interviewing people. You know, I'm still using my skills. So I wouldn't take a cut and pay. No. Okay. Somebody said they're a willow tree because they're flexible. That's great. Okay. So hopefully I kind of, oh, tell me about a time you worked with a non-responsive person. What did you do to still meet the deadline? We'll show you how to do that in a star story format. Okay, that's great. Okay, so I was looking for good examples of images for how to conduct a good video interview. And I couldn't find any good images, but I found a really funny one when I was Googling good images for video interviews. I found this one. I thought, well, this has some good teaching points in it. This is rather funny. This has teaching points, like make sure your camera angle is good. Make sure your background is distracting. So this was funny. And then also I found this photo. And we on the pit crew, during the first few minutes of our calls with the pit crew, when somebody is doing a practice interview or a video, we spend the first few minutes talking about your video setup. And many of the calls start off like this, where the camera angle is a little bit off. You see ceiling fans in the ceiling. There's bright lights in the background. The person's in silhouette and they're looking at the they're looking at the monitor up there rather than looking at the camera. And we advise people to get the camera so it's about 1 inch above your eye line. And when you're talking, look at the camera. Make sure you have good lighting. I bought a little light on Amazon for $20, one of those ring lights. Try to keep it to the side so it doesn't reflect too much in my glasses. And it does help with the lighting. So make sure you do have a good setup. Okay. Okay, I see a question about those of us over 60. Pointers on how to address the elephant in the room if the interviewer doesn't ask relating to the age. I would say just show enthusiasm. I mean, I applied for a job at the age of 54 and got it. And I applied for another job, 2 jobs at the age of 59, and I got 2 job offers because I was networking with people I knew, and I came in and said, okay, what's your biggest challenge that I can help you with right now? And they said, I needed somebody to set up an HR recruiting thing. I said, well, I've got that experience to do that. And I just showed I have the experience. I can hit the ground running. So I just came in with enthusiasm, found out what they needed, and proved to them that I had what I needed. And I never once talked about my age. My resume showed it. I showed everything on my resume. Don't always recommend that, but mine did. So I would say just come in with enthusiasm and talk about your experience. Back to video interviewing, I did find this example. Her background's a little busy, but it's relating to the work she does, so it's okay. I liked her lighting and professional attire and looking at the camera. So you want to make sure you have good audio. You want to test it out with a friend ahead of time. Good lighting, good camera angle. You want the camera directly at eye level or maybe an inch or two above. Have a professional background with minimal distractions, professional attire. I tend to wear solid colors, and I just tend to wear just a shirt, top. I don't wear jackets much anymore. And in the summertime inside, it kind of gets hot. And then be sure to look at the camera when speaking, like that's your best friend. And people have funny little ways of printing out smiley faces and putting them over the camera and put a hole where the camera is. Look at the camera when speaking and test your setup ahead of time. And if anybody else has any suggestions regarding good video setup, feel free to type those into chat. Good. Yeah, so, and Jeff has the cutouts you can download for the smiley faces for your camera. Work in my kitchen, put my friend's artwork in the background instead of seeing my shelving. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I like that. Shelving, if the shelving is closed cabinets, that can look great. Okay. I have a comment about audio. Great. Make the comment. Or if you'd like to go off mute. Yes.
Yeah, so this week we had two practice interviews, and both of them had a little difficulty with the audio. And I don't know what causes that. One was a woman who, told us right up front that she talked softly. And so her microphone had a hard time picking her up. Almost every question would start off and we couldn't hear her. So some people realize this and they wear earbuds, which is entirely acceptable as far as I'm concerned, if the alternative is not being able to hear you. And then I see somebody on the profile on the gallery here who's also got over the ear with a boom microphone. That works as well. It is very discouraging and distracting when you can't hear the candidate talk.
Right.
So don't do that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. Yes, yesterday I was coaching somebody and the audio on his computer was kind of muffled. So he put on the full headset with a microphone and I could hear much clearer, and it made it for a much more effective meeting. And somebody asked about the Zoom virtual backgrounds. I would say be careful about those. Now, Mark's works pretty well and there isn't too much distortion, but sometimes they can cause really distracting distortion. Mark, move your head a little bit, see what happens. Yeah, it's not too bad. Yours works pretty well. I was watching that conference last week with the Professional Association for Resume Writers, and one of the speakers had a virtual background. Every time he moved his hands, it trailed with this green color, and then it cut off his head part of the way. It was so distracting. So I'd be very careful about those. I would avoid those if you can. I saw somebody, very high-ranking person in the government, got a ironing board, put their laptop in an ironing board, put a chair in front of it, in front of like a very professional bookcase. So they moved themselves around to a place that looked professional. That was great. Nobody can see the ironing board. They can just see the background. That was good. Library, I think, is great. If it's not too distracting in the background, but just books is good. A plant on a desk is fine, as long as there's not lots of other clutter and things. So thank you. Great questions there. Closed cabinets in the kitchen area is great. I think that's fine. Oh, I wanted to ask a question in chat. What do you do to prepare for an interview? So go ahead and type a few key words into chat regarding what you do to prepare for an interview. And then we'll talk about a few things. So I'll pause just a moment. Research the company, good. Look up their website, practice. Practice, people forget to practice. It's amazing how it feels when you say something out loud. It sounds different, and then you decide you might want to tweak it. Personality report on the interviewer. Oh, okay. Okay, read about the company. Yeah, you do sometimes want to find out about the interviewer. Maybe they went to the same school. Maybe they're both from Iowa like you are or something, you know, that gives you something to talk about. Practice. Chapstick. Yes, drink water. Yes, I always have water with me just in case, because your throat can get dry if you're nervous. Sleep well, research. People forget to do that. Take care of yourself and sleep well. I mean, do your research, do your homework, and then get rested. Go for a walk. Yes, take care of yourself. Annual report. I may not be able to relax. Pray. Pray before the interview. Good. I may not have time to read all of these. Review the history. These are all excellent. Excellent. Good, good. And an additional thing to do is really study the job description, either online or print it off and highlight the key words, the key requirements for the job, and have a story or an example or some facts about each thing that they mention in the job description. Be prepared and prepare to respond to the skills you don't have. Like, for example, if it's agile methodologies is something they're looking for, but yet they called you in because of all your other experience, still be prepared. Even if you have not used agile methodologies at work, do some studying, watch a little YouTube video, be prepared to explain what it is. So if they ask you about your knowledge, you can say, I've done some research, this is what it is, and have a list of questions to ask. Good. Okay. And some additional things, as you all mentioned, study their website, company information, culture, mission, values. One of my favorite questions to ask in the pit crew, and people have thanked me for this because then they were asked this exact question in an actual interview, is, so what do you know about our company and how do you think you'll fit into our culture? So be prepared to describe what you know about the company, how long they've been around, their service offerings, maybe recent awards, and what you know about their culture, mission, values, and how those align to yours. And then research about the interviewers on LinkedIn and be prepared to ask questions. Somebody mentioned that. And there's one or two key questions you want to ask towards the beginning of the interview, and I'll show you what that is. And then try to make it conversational during the interview, and then definitely at the end. And then be prepared to be to that location on time. You want to walk in up to that receptionist about 5 and 10 minutes right before your interview, and then be prepared and be logged on 5 to 10 minutes early for your video interview as well. Okay, are you all ready for the how-to section now? Type yes in chat or comments if you're ready for for our how-to section. So if you're ready, somebody said ready, good, let's go, that's great. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about how to have a good start, which some of you all had asked about, how to have a good close, how to answer the question, why did you leave your last job? I'll provide some pointers, and if you'd like additional coaching on that, Mark's great at that. And I also do, I serve as a career coach and do one-on-one sessions with people as well. And then also how to answer a question you don't know anything about, how to answer a question, and then how to answer behavioral interviewing questions. We'll talk about what that is and how to answer it with a STAR story. Okay. So at the beginning of an interview, having a good opening, they'll ask you some sort of opening question, walk me through your background, tell me about yourself. How long do you think your answer should be to this? Type a number in chat. How long do you think your answer should be to this opening question? Somebody said 5 to 8 minutes. I was coaching somebody, a very experienced HR leader, somebody I've known for years. His opening answer was 9 minutes. I almost cut him off at 5, but I let him go. It was a practice. Then I asked him, how'd you feel about that answer? He goes, it was too long, wasn't it? I said, yes. I tuned off at about 45 seconds or 60 seconds. So you want it to be brief. Less is more. Less is more both in resumes and interviewing, especially video interviews. And now that I've had the experience over 6 years being a recruiter and interviewing hundreds of people, and then doing the pit crew interviews and then one-on-one coaching week after week for the last 2 years, my brain, and it's pretty typical, shuts off after about 45, 60 seconds. So somebody said 90 seconds, that's good. 30 seconds might be a little too short, too brief. You want to aim for about 60 seconds and a little longer than that, maybe 60 to 90. Yes. So yeah, no more than 2 minutes. Thank you for that. Anything more than 3 or 4 minutes, your interviewer will become frustrated. Yes. Even if they say, walk me through your resume, you don't want to do that because they'll get frustrated. Plus, if it's only a 30-minute interview and you spend a third of the time on that question, that could frustrate your interviewer. Okay. So when asked that opening question, and it could be, tell me about yourself, walk me through your background, walk me through your resume, why are you a great candidate? Have a good opening answer. And here's a sample outline. And once again, I'll be sharing some ideas, and feel free to leverage any of these ideas. You can take pictures of the screens if you wish. You can leverage them, the things that work for you, things that you don't think will work for you. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, because everybody has their own unique style. And I'm providing feedback just based on my experience. And so in terms of tell me about yourself, the first thing to do is say thank you. That'll help you breathe, actually. That'll actually calm you. If they say, well, to get started with this interview, tell me about yourself. If you start off and say, thank you so much for this time. I'm really glad to be here today because, and be prepared to say why you're glad to be here to talk about this particular company. And that'll calm your nerves. And then remember, the next thing is, if they're looking for like a bachelor's degree, talk about your education. You know, by way of background, I've got a bachelor's in business administration from SMU. And in terms of my background, then you want to cover 4 key items about your background that align with the job. 2 types of experiences that you have that are relevant to the job, and maybe a couple of professional skills that they're looking for. And then, now this part takes practice. People practice this a lot in the pit crew. Then gracefully pivot to a question and ask them what's important to them, because your job in the interview is really, it's like a sales call. You're really calling on them to find out what they need so that you can provide evidence that you're the person to fill their needs, and you're there to help. Like Walt talked about, I'm here to help. So you want to ask them some questions. So here's an example based on that outline. So let's pretend I'm applying for a business analyst position. So if they ask me, you know, say, hey, Carol, welcome to this interview. Walk me through your background. I would start off with, well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm excited to be here at this company because you're recognized in the industry. I would insert a couple things. And my experience aligns with this job description. By way of background, I've got a bachelor's degree, and I have over 5 years of experience as a business analyst, including experience working with clients and documenting business requirements and documenting process flows. And I'm really experienced in working in fast-paced environments and working directly with clients. And I've studied your job description in preparation for this interview, and I'm really interested in hearing, what are the top 3 skills that you need? How can I help you the most? Or there are other ways of asking that question, like, what are your priorities for this position? What are the most significant things I can accomplish for you in this position? But pivoting to that question, and it takes a little practice to do it gracefully and, gracefully and smoothly, that can set the tone for the entire conversation, because that way you'll find out what they need. If any of you have ever asked a question like that at the beginning of your opening statement in an interview, type something into chat. Say, yes, I've asked an opening question. Yeah, I'd like to hear from the audience. I'm going to pause for a moment. Has anybody ever done that in an interview? You know, I answered the opening question and then asked a question. Now, a couple times in the pit crew, we would ask the opening question. So tell us about yourself. And we've had people say, well, before I answer that, I want to find out from you, what are your top 3 challenges? And we don't recommend that, because what we recommend is provide the courtesy of answering the question and then ask your question at the end. Doesn't sound like anybody's ever done this. So I don't see anybody in chat who's ever asked an opening question. Somebody says it's a great idea. Well, I encourage you to practice it. Yes, either with a coach or with the pit crew. Okay, and then at the end of an interview, what do you typically say at the end of an interview? So I'm going to open this up to chat. Type in a few key things. What do you say at the end of an interview? What are your thoughts about giving a star example right off the bat? I wouldn't do a full star story. I might do a CR story, which is, in my career, I had this challenge of implementing a global leadership development program, and I was able to put together a team, design a program, we implemented it, and it made a positive impact on the culture. So the challenge, results. I would do that in an opening, not maybe a full star story.
You could also ask them, Carol, do they have any questions of your skills relating to the job? Like, do you have any concerns?
Okay, I wouldn't use the word concern. And they will, that's the purpose of the interview, is for them to ask you questions. What you could do, and you'll see that I mentioned at the end of the interview, hold that thought, because I'll tell you a question you can ask towards the end of the interview to see in a gentle way to find out if they have concerns without saying the word concern. So hold that thought. Those are good. And at the end of the interview, so people say they want to thank them for their time. That's so important. Thank them for the time. Ask them what the next steps are. Ask 3 questions. Ask for the job. You don't really ask for the job. What you want to do is have a strong statement at the end and indicate you're interested in the job. But yes, thank them for the time. Look forward to next steps. Enthusiastically ask for the job or say that you're excited about the job. Remind them of your strengths. Yes, that align to the job. Good. Okay. All right. Summarize how you fulfill their challenges. Yes. Statement of interest. Restate. Summarize your strengths. Good. Those are excellent answers. So what you want to do at the end of the interview, when the interviewer says, okay, I'm done with all of my questions. What questions do you have for me? Now you have to be careful about this. It's a 30-minute interview and that's minute number 27. You don't want to start asking them 7 or 8 questions because you want to be mindful of their time. So, but you do want to have at least 5 questions prepared. You may only have time for 1 or 2 or maybe 3 questions, and you want to save time for your final closing statement. So you may want to check, how much time they have for any additional questions. And then the first thing you want to do is, to that point about asking if they have any concerns without saying the word concerns, is ask a question. This is at the end of the interview. Ask a question to solicit their feedback. So if they do have any concerns, you can nip it in the bud. Some people have asked, well, can you envision me in this role? Another thing people have asked, and I did this once, is there any reason I would not be considered for this position? I did that once and I'm glad I did, because the hiring manager at Robert Half said, well, Carol, you had this big office at EDS and here you'd be working out in the cubes with all the recruiters. I don't think you'd like it. I said, oh, I didn't tell you, when HP bought us, we were all in cubes. We had a ball. So I was glad I asked that question. And then the other way to phrase the question, and most people are really comfortable doing it this way, is that at the end of the interview, when they say, okay, do you have any questions for us? To ask the question, are there any particular skills you're looking for that I haven't fully addressed? That's a way of asking if they see any gaps or concerns. Either something they've already asked you about or another skill that they're thinking about. And so that's a real good way of uncovering any potential concerns. And then if they mention it, then you can say, oh, we didn't get a chance to talk about, would you like to hear my experience in that area? So good. Okay. And then after you've kind of nipped that in the bud, then it's good to ask 1 or 2 questions, depending on the time, to get them talking about the the position in a positive way. And the more they talk about what they like, the better they'll feel about the conversation. You know, asking them questions like what they like most about working there. Or if they're the hiring manager, you could ask them, how do you like for team members to communicate with you? Hiring managers like that question. I have some people I've been coaching and they've been recording their actual interviews so I can hear them and then we can debrief about them. And I've heard hiring managers respond really well to that question. You know, how do you like for team members to communicate with you? Or how does this role relate to other roles in the organization? What are your goals for this organization? And somebody asked, how do you handle when they say they can go over a few minutes when asking questions? How long do you go or how many questions? I wouldn't go too much longer. I would just go over like 2 or 3 minutes. If they say they can go over a few minutes, that means 2 or 3 to me. Also ask for contact information so I can send a thank you note. Yes, you can do that during the interview or maybe with your recruiter afterwards. Okay, yes. Number 1 there. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that attention to detail. There, number 1. That's okay, good, close. There. Okay, just looking at potentially a typo. Okay, and then also you want to make sure you have time for your final closing statement. So your closing statement, this is just an example. And of course you'd want to put it in your own words. One time, or just a couple of times in my career, when I was actually the hiring manager and I was interviewing people, I had one of my candidates close his interview like this, and I was just blown away with it. I really enjoyed it. He said, well, in summary, it sounds like you were looking for, and he inserted the top 3 skills that I was looking for. And he said, you know, I'm really comfortable with all those responsibilities because that's what I've been doing over the past 5 years. Sounds like an excellent opportunity, exciting opportunity, and I know I can help you with that XXX project, and I can't wait to get started. What are the next steps? So that's an example of a close that would get them talking. And when they, when you ask what the next steps are, they often say, well, we're going to be interviewing several candidates and we'll make a decision in a couple of weeks. And then that's kind of open-ended. So to tie it up with a bow and to kind of show accountability, you can say, if I haven't heard from anybody by X date, who should I follow up with? And that way you tie it up with a bow. Okay. Somebody said, I will use that in my thank you note. Is that okay? I'm not sure what you're going to use in the thank you note, but maybe the summary could be. Okay, good. All right. So now we have a few minutes left to talk through some of these tough questions. Yes, you can summarize your enthusiasm for the job, you know, why you want to work there, and why you see it's a great match in your thank you note. That's great. Good. So one thing to be prepared for when you're interviewing is, and I learned this as being a recruiter, both in agency and corporate environments. In both situations, as a recruiter, I had a form where I would write in the person's name, what they were looking for, and then all of their RFLs, all of their reasons for leaving their most recent 4 or 5 jobs. So be prepared to have a short statement as to why you've left your most recent positions. So be prepared with that. And then here is a sample kind of outline, and I'll provide some examples. You know, where possible, indicate that you learned a lot and contributed, you know, to the company, and then briefly, in just 1 or 2 sentences, explain the reason you left or were laid off or were fired. And I'll walk through some examples. And then, if you can, without making it sound too flowery, mention something good, like, you know, we were part of a group layoff, but they treated us well, and I have a good leadership reference from there. If you can end with something positive, that will help you stand out. I was very impressed. I can think of one candidate over the years that I was interviewing people, ended with some positive comments, and that really made him stand out. So if you resigned, I mean, that could throw off some red flags potentially. So you want to word this carefully. And this is one example. So if they ask you, why did you leave your last job, you know, in a job that you quit, you could say, well, I learned a lot there and contributed there for 5 years. However, it became apparent that the company was changing direction. So I decided to look for a new opportunity that aligns more with my career goals. And that's what brings me here today. And when I resigned, I gave them 3 weeks notice. I gave them extra notice and I trained my backup, and I have good references from there. So I'm not saying anything bad about the company or about the culture or about my boss. I'm just saying it was apparent that they were going in a different direction. And so I decided to make a change. Okay. It seems to be the trend that people leave a company every 3 to 5 years. I would say it's more recently, it's even more frequent than that. Sometimes 18 months to 2 years. So it's actually very common. So I would say just be prepared for your statements, for your reasons for leaving. Now this is for somebody that was fired. And this is actually sort of loosely based on a real scenario where the person wanted to be fairly direct in their answer. Because if you were fired and you say, well, it was kind of mutual, recruiters don't fall for that because it's never mutual. It's either you resigned or you were terminated. It's not usually just a mutual, or maybe they asked you to resign, which really is kind of terminated. You could say you resigned. So don't use words that kind of cover up the situation. If you can be pretty direct about it, here's an example. And this might take practice. So if you have this kind of situation, you may want to reach out to a coach like Mark McDonald or somebody like me to talk through this. So here's one example. You could say, you know, I contributed and learned a lot by working at this company for 5 years. However, recently I made an error on a complex international travel document and I ended up separating. And then the company since decided that they needed to outsource that particular part of the travel logistics. But they treated me well, and they gave me a severance package, and I have good leadership references from there. So that's a very brief statement about the situation. So, but that one might take a little practice. Now here's one that's happened to virtually almost everyone. And if you were laid off, you don't need to say much at all because this has happened to everyone. And here's a very simple way of saying it. I learned a lot at the company. However, we recently experienced a downsizing. And you might want to add, and mine was one of the positions out of 100 or one of the many positions that was impacted. But they treated us well and gave us a good severance package. So short and sweet. It's happened to everyone. And have you ever been asked a question you know nothing about? Type yes into chat. We're going to move on to another topic. Questions you might know nothing about. Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. So if it's in the job description, you want to be prepared. Even if you don't have a lot of experience, they may just say knowledgeable about. So gain some knowledge, do some research. So you want to be prepared to indicate that you've heard of the topic, explain how it's similar to something you've done, or explain you've done research. Okay. So we'll walk through a couple scenarios here. One where it's in the job description and one where it's not on the job description. So this one, let's say Agile was on the job description, but you don't have a lot of experience with Agile. And what if they say, do you understand Agile? And listen to their question. They're just saying, do you understand it? They're not saying, do you have experience? Because many times when I practice with people, I say, do you understand Agile? People say, no, I don't have any experience, or I did, but it was a long time ago. Don't say negative things or disclaimers. Say, yes, I have a good understanding of Agile. I've attended Scrum meetings in my recent job, and I've read further about it, and recently took an online course, even an online YouTube video course. And I know that Agile, and then describe what you know what it is. And so you should be prepared to discuss any skills that are on the job description. Now, what if they ask something that's not on the job description and you know nothing about it and you're not even sure what it is? My coaching to you on that is ask a question to get clarity, to try to get some grounding of what they're talking about. So let's pretend you don't know what SAP is, and it wasn't on the job description, you weren't prepared, and they say, do you know how to use SAP? You may or may not want to say it wasn't on the job description, but you may want to say, ask a question and say something like, well, how significant is SAP in this organization? If you don't know if it's a software package, if you don't know what it is, and just ask them an open-ended question. You know, how significant is it in this role, or how is it used? And then they'll answer. They'll say something like, it's our enterprise resource planning system that we use for accounting and HR. And that would give you a hint as to what it is. And then you could say, well, at my current employer, we use Workday as our system for accounting and HR. And I learned that really easily. So I'm confident I can learn a system like SAP. So if you don't know something, ask a question to get clarity, and that might help you. And we have just a couple of questions. And have you ever heard of what a behavioral interviewing question is? And type no if you haven't, if you don't know what it is. Basically, these are, yeah, I see a lot of yeses. These are the questions where people say, tell me about a time, or walk me through an example. What they're doing is they're looking for an example of a time you did something, because they're looking for evidence that you have those skills. And one example is to answer it with a star story. And I'll talk through what a full star story is. Another way to do it is the CR method, and say, yes, I did have that challenge and I had this result. And if they want to know more, they'll ask you to explain how. So you can do the CR method, which is shorter, or the star story method, which is a little bit longer. Still no more than 60 to 90 seconds at the very most. So with a star story, and you're welcome to take a picture of the slide if you want to remember this. What you want to do is explain the situation, the task, the actions you took, and spend more time on this and the result. Most people spend minutes describing the situation and forget to talk about the actions they took and the result. And this is what the interviewer wants to hear, the actions. They're looking for evidence you've done it before. So here's an example I'll walk through quickly, and then we're about out of time for any questions. So if somebody asked me, tell me about a time you had to work with a difficult coworker, I would say when I was a project manager at X company, I was asked to lead a critical project, and I was tasked to work with somebody who had a reputation of being difficult to work with. So here's what I did. I set up an introductory meeting, asked some open-ended questions. We discovered we had things in common. This led to a discussion about how we could work together. I set up regular checkpoints, and the result was we were able to build a strong working relationship and completed this project on time. And this person actually gained a better reputation in the organization. So you can see, based on my answer, I spend more time in the action section, and I talked through it rather quickly for the sake of time today. So I recommend that you take a picture of this slide and work on this activity sometime today or this evening. Write a star story in response to this type of question. Tell me about a time you worked with a challenging coworker or a client or boss, or do one for all three. These are very common questions, and this would be a good opportunity to practice writing down a star story. So I highly recommend that you take a picture of this or write down some quick notes and do that sometime tonight. And this is what we've covered. And Jeff, I'm out of time.
We can go another 15 minutes if need be. So I mean,
Okay.
that's fine. I mean,
All right. So I will go back to this activity slide. And as a learning and development, part of my background as a learning and development professional is you really get more out of training when you apply your new skills right away. So I encourage you, if possible, as soon as we get off this webinar, if you have 15 minutes, I recommend you go through this exercise and pick 1, 2, or 3 of those scenarios, a coworker, client, or boss, and write out a star story just to practice and get that in your muscle memory of writing that out. And so you can take a picture of this slide or write down some notes of star. Okay. And then this is what we've talked through today. And I'm going to review this real quickly. And while I'm doing this, if you have any questions, feel free to type those into chat. And if there are any particular topics that were really helpful for you or insights, feel free to put those in chat as well. So we talked about video interviews, how to make sure you have a good audio, video, lighting setup, minimal distractions in the background, how to prepare for an interview. You know, type up or print out that job description, highlight those keywords, prepare stories or facts about each one of those. We talked about several how-tos, good start, good close, how to answer the question, why did you leave your last job? Be prepared for that, for the most recent 4 or 5 jobs that you've left. And just treat them matter of fact, you know, downsizing. Everybody's been a victim of downsizing. And how to answer a question you don't know anything about. Do some research if it's something on the job description. Take a little course if you can. And then answer behavioral questions with a STAR story, with an example. Either a full STAR story or the CR method. Yes, I was tasked once with working with somebody that had a challenging reputation. And we were able to do that project successfully. And that person through the process actually gained a better reputation. And then the hiring manager might say, wow, how'd you do that? Good, good. All right, so we do have a couple of questions. How do you overcome the you don't have experience in the industry roadblock? Well, if they've called you in for an interview, they like something about your background. So that might be a question you ask them early in the interview. Maybe that's the question you ask them at the beginning of your opening statement. So what was it about my resume that intrigued me? Because even though you don't have much experience in their industry, there might be some skills that you have that they need. So the one thing I would say to avoid is say, oh, I've never worked in manufacturing, but accounting's the same everywhere. I would be careful of that because I know hiring managers in the manufacturing industry that'll say, no, accounting is very different in manufacturing. And so don't belittle the industry. So that's what not to do. Definitely research, what I would do is informational interviews with people in that industry and say, I was just talking with an expert in this. And I found for accounting, for manufacturing, what you really need to do is this. Do you find that's important? You know, something like that to show that you've done some digging and some research. Good. Hopefully that answers your question. If anybody else has any insights, please add in. And Jeff, do we have any questions in the Facebook group?
No, there were just some of the comments that you were asking questions that they answered, but no questions so far.
Good. Well, thanks for playing along to the Facebook group. Let's see. Ask specific methods or use it from a company.
I like this one. How do you deal with the hostile interviewer?
Oh, there's probably lots of different ways. They try to trip. There are people that are trained to try to trip you up and to make it uncomfortable. And I would counter that just with professionalism, just be very professional. If they say, so tell me a time you made a mistake, you know, or something where they're, or you don't really have that kind of experience, do you? Just respond graciously, professionally. That's what I would do. Does anybody else have suggestions about that? Walt or Mark might have suggestions about that. They're probably just playing games with you and trying to see if they can trip you up.
Well, there's Kelly also asked, I just had an interview this morning and the interviewer was very hostile. Should I cut the interview off? It was the final interview.
Well, that might be, and that happened to somebody I know that was interviewing at one of the big company, and his final interview was with a senior leader at that big company. And that senior leader, I think, had been trained to be tough in interviews, and it kind of rattled the guy, but he was gracious, answered the questions, and he got the job. And he's reporting to somebody a layer or two down. So sometimes you just run into that. So I wouldn't end the interview, especially if you're not going to be reporting to that person. Sometimes people are trained to be tough in interviews. So that's my thought. I don't know if, Walt, did you have any, I don't know if you were going to go off mute or anything. Did you have any suggestions about dealing with hostile interviewers?
Yeah, I do, but Mark's been waiting patiently, so I'll let him.
Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, let me just say, quickly, Carol's right. And some interviewers will try to put you under stress to see how you react to stress. Okay. Not every business situation is hunky dory. Not every month do they make their earnings, and not everybody, may believe your perspective. So they'll put some pressure on you. So be gracious. Don't take the bait. They may ask a question that would lead to an argument. Don't you think you're overqualified? Well, don't take the bait, which would be, no, I'm not overqualified. That'd be taking the bait, right? You're going to address the motivation behind that question. And also a well-placed question, like in this particular case, you gave the answer. They said they didn't believe you. You might pause for a few seconds and then say, what part of it didn't you believe? And let me clarify that. And let me clarify that if I understand what part you found hard to believe. So
That's a good one. Yeah, often asking a question can kind of diffuse the situation. Yes. Good.
My first reaction to I don't believe you is, in all my professional life, I've never had anyone say that to me. Just repeat that and say, now, if you have some concerns about what I'm telling you, I would be glad to discuss them further and indicate to you what the situation was. What would you like me to talk about?
Yeah. Give me specific questions. Yeah. Good.
And
good.
And one other tip, and I think I learned this from Jeff Morris. I mean, if someone is picking on you realize that you can always just say you may be right, which doesn't say you're right, doesn't say you necessarily agree. It just, ends the confrontation.
Yeah. Or say, yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective or something.
Yeah. Tony asked, can you kindly explain what the CR story means?
And I've learned this from Mark. I'll give Mark credit. Challenge, result. So if somebody says, tell me about a time you worked with a challenging boss, the CR method is, yes, there was a time I was reporting to somebody who had a reputation of being challenging. My result was I was able to build a really strong relationship with that boss, and we still keep up to this day. That's the CR method. That's a real short way of providing evidence when they ask you something. The longer is the full STAR story. Is that it? Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, and actually somebody else did answer that in the chat also for us.
Okay.
One more question here from Deanna. How do you respond to, aren't you overqualified?
Yeah, I'd like to hear Mark, Walt, and then Jeff, if you have, there's probably different ways of doing that.
Well, I'm going to defer to Walt because he's got a great answer.
Okay, Walt, how would you do that?
I coach people in overqualified, and Mark coaches people in why'd you leave your last job, right? So here's the objective of overqualified. Number one, what's the motive behind the question? Every question has a reason for being asked. Why are they asking this question? This one is particularly emphasized on the motive behind it. There is a concern. They are worried. There's some risk in hiring you because you will not be happy in this job, or the salary, you may not get the kind of salary you want because you've done a lot of different things. So my question to you is this before you answer the question: is this the job you want? And is this the company where you want to work? All right. Because if it is, then all I have to do is convince them of those two things. So that's the strategy. Say, all right, I've done a lot of things in the past. So my first response is to get them out of the negative and saying, well, if you say I'm overqualified, then you would agree I'm qualified. And of course, that's a yes. So it's a sales technique, get you in a positive frame of mind. So I've done a lot of different things in the past, had all different responsibilities. I've learned an awful lot of things, but this is the job that really excites me. This is the one where I want to get up and go to work every day. This is the reason I don't need an alarm clock. This focus is exactly what I'm looking for today. And this company is where I'm looking to do it. I would say that here's the reasons why this company, your customer focused, my passion for the education industry, the fact that you have a top suite of products that help the educational world. So I can help them, retain students, or I can help them attract more students, increase our graduation rates. And I started, just talking about the things that drive me to help the client achieve what they want to achieve. That's what energizes me. That's what I want to do. So if you can convince me that this is the job that I want, if you just go back in and say no, like Mark said, and disagree with him, now I'm arguing with my interviewer. And then if I tell you I can hit the ground running and I got all this experience, then, yeah, I know that. I know you can do all that. That's why I'm worried about it. And so we don't want to use that technique. So I also put that in the opening statement. When you do your opening, one of the things I say, we talk about why do I like this job and why do I want this company inside of that 90-second opening statement. So I'll go ahead and say it then, early on, to say this is the job I want. So that's my suggestion. And you can say one other thing.
Yes.
You can end it with, I would never take a position where I'm not fully committed, which answers the short timer concern directly.
Right. A lot of hiring managers are worried about interviewing people that are more qualified because they think they could be a flight risk that would take the next job offer that's at that level. So yeah, that's exactly what I did when I retired from EDSHP as an HR manager and was applying as a recruiter position. I kind of nipped that question in the bud in my opening statement. I'm here because I want to work at this company, and this is the type of work I want to do at this career.
All right, there's one more question Olga asked, and this will be our last question. How do you answer to, well, you don't have recent experience in the U.S. She's relocated to the U.S. after leaving abroad after a number of years. So.
Has anybody really asked that? Recent experience in the U.S.? I can't imagine.
What profession are you in? Oh, marketing. Well, what did you do? Did you keep up? I mean, my answer would be, I know for me, I haven't, since my last job, I get 7 different trade journals that I read every month, that I'm keeping up with the current trends, the current things that are happening. So if you can maybe pull something like that going, well, you're right. I haven't lived in the United States, but I've lived overseas. I see the trends that are going on there in marketing. I do follow what's going on. I've been part of this association. I read these trade journals, read these blogs. I follow these people who talk about marketing online. I know I would be able to keep up.
Might ask a qualifying question. I said, what is it about the U.S. experience that you have concerns about?
Yeah.
But specifically about the U.S. work, because they say, well, you don't know anything about Facebook and you don't use whatever, all these other digital, whatever it might be. There's something in there. They've got a really broad category. So what is it specifically that you have concerns about if you're doing the U.S. marketing? Then you can address those specifics.
Yes.
I agree, totally agree with Walt. This is a version of the question, how have you kept current? It's just it's geography based, but it's how have you kept current with and so you need to, talk the most recent talk and then ask them, what specific thing, like Walt said, what specific thing were they referring to when they said that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, Carol, thank you very much for your time. Great information. Great presentation today. For those who want to reach out to Carol via LinkedIn, here's what her LinkedIn profile looks like. If you are going to send her a LinkedIn request, please be sure to connect with her. If you connect with her, please be sure to send a personal note. Let her know that you saw her here. For myself personally, I do not connect with anybody who does not send a personal note. I want to know why we should connect, where you saw me at, where we met at. So I'm sure Carol would appreciate the same information. We're putting on training 5 days a week. This was our 258th workshop we put on since COVID started. Tomorrow, Thursday, every Thursday, we do effective resumes, common resume mistakes for 2021. Once again, we'll have Carol back with us to do that. On Friday, the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group at 9:30 in the morning. Strength Finders and Core Clarity. This is a great way to explain to people what your strengths are and how for you to be able to realize some core clarity, how they sort of fit, and sort of tells yourself how you would fit into an organization. PJ Dunn is an excellent speaker, and it'll be a great presentation Friday morning. Next Monday for Networking Mondays, how serving turns into networking opportunities with our speaker Heidi Torres. Every Monday, we have a different speaker talking about networking. I take from this topic that it's going to talk a little bit about volunteering and how helping other people turns into networking opportunities. On Tuesday, next Tuesday, how to use LinkedIn for job hunting, strategies to get results. That'll be with Locke Alderson. And then next Wednesday, we start up with our 13-part interviewing session again. So it'll be lesson number 1, preparing to be interviewed and how employment recruiting works. So you can join us next Wednesday, same login information, same bat channel, same bat time. This session will be recorded. It will be on the Career FW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. Please follow us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'll take a couple hours for this presentation to get loaded up onto the YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, it looks something like this. Be sure to click on the green area where it says playlist and then pick whatever topic you want. Don't click on the video, but click underneath where it says view full playlist, where you see the red arrow. And then up will come a list of all the different events, the titles, and you can go back and watch whichever one you'd like. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, please join the Career USA mailing list. You can send an email to Career USA, the +, subscribe at groups.io. I'll put that email address up here at the very end. So please note, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Carol's a volunteer, Mark's a volunteer, Walt's a volunteer. We're all here to help you land your next great opportunity. I'm a volunteer. I've never gotten paid to do any of this over the last 12 years I've been doing this. We survive on donations. It pays for Zoom, it pays for the web names, pays for the web hostings. Please consider making a donation when you get your next job. So thank you for joining us today. Have a great week. And Carol, once again, thank you very much for your time. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And thanks, Walt and Mark, for helping to answer questions. Appreciate it.